Okay, well, I think that we'll get started, and I know we're expecting a few more folks, but hopefully folks can just kind of join in and catch up as they get logged in. Good afternoon. My name is Brenda Schaefer-Pellinan. I am a planner with the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging. I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us for today's information session with ConnectAbility of Minnesota and the Arrowhead Regional Transportation Coordinating Council, or RTCC. Today, we're going to learn a little bit about the state of our current local transportation systems, where the Arrowhead RTCC fits into those efforts in the region, and how ConnectAbility of Minnesota is working with other organizations throughout the state to develop a rural transportation program in areas where there are no taxis or public transit options. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items. Today's session will be recorded to share on our Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging YouTube channel. I encourage you to subscribe to our channel so that you can keep up with the latest additions to our video library. We're always looking for suggestions for future topics. If you have suggestions for topics or speakers, please feel free to send me those at my email, which I'll share in the chat. Please keep your microphone set to mute. Just a note, if you experience issues with your bandwidth or with your audio quality, it does often help to disable your camera. As I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to, you can certainly enter your name and your organization you're with or the community that you're from. And if you've got some input as to what you're hoping to get out of the session today or any questions right out of the gate. If you do have any questions during today's session, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. We will also take some time at the end of the session to take some additional questions. A quick reminder also to visit our Facebook page for more information about other upcoming events, such as webinars on renters' rights for market rate housing, spending down to public programs, and dementia conversations. You can also check out our website at arrowheadaging.org. I'd like to welcome our presenters today. Beverly Sidlow-Tolliver is the Transportation Coordinator with the Arrowhead RTCC. The mission of the Arrowhead RTCC is to improve access, availability, and options for transportation services in northeastern Minnesota through improved communication, coordination, and collaboration. Cherie Wegner, the Executive Director, and Fred Sandel, the Lyft Program Coordinator with ConnectAbility Minnesota, are also joining us. ConnectAbility of Minnesota is a nonprofit organization that was established in 1954, and they offer a range of programs to older adults and individuals with disabilities across the state of Minnesota. Thank you all for joining us today. I'll now turn things over to Beverly to get us started by kind of setting the transportation table.
Yes, hello. I'll start sharing my screen. And okay, can I get a thumbs up from you, Brenda? Can we see that? Great. So yeah, I coordinate the Arrowhead Regional Transportation Coordinating Council. And that was a great introduction. Thank you, Brenda, that outlines the particular mission and some of the ways we're hoping to complete that mission. So there's another nice repeat of our mission statement. And so we consist of stakeholders and members of the public that are interested in improving mobility for people who are transit dependent or lack natural transportation supports. And we're designed in a way that uses system thinking to engage our stakeholders. And we also include the traditional transportation stakeholders, such as transportation providers, as well as the non-traditional stakeholders, which is more folks that are impacted by the transportation field, but maybe themselves don't provide any transportation. So how we interact with the state, there are 8 active RTCCs and then 6 similar or type of councils in the Twin City areas, which are referred to as TCAPs. We have funding through state, federal, and local match, and MnDOT provides us with our technical support as well as project management. So one of our main interactions with the state is we provide feedback to the Minnesota Council on Transportation Access, which has several state leadership roles on their council, as well as feedback to MnDOTs. And then also one of the large goals, which I'll go into a little bit later on, is that looking at developing transportation management coordination centers throughout the state. So let's see. These are particular objectives for the Arrowhead region. Like I said, there's 8 active RTCCs throughout the state. And our primary focus of the RTCCs was to establish coordination between transportation providers and service agencies to fill transportation gaps and provide services with the same or fewer resources. So that's looking at streamlining access to transportation and provide riders with more options to where they're able to travel. So it's looking at traditionally transportation models have acted in a type of silo, which I'm sure a lot of fields have been doing this, and maybe not partnering with anyone outside of the transportation agent industry. So we're looking at to improve coordination efforts, which will promote flexibility and also then resiliency among transportation providers. Sorry, my dog is whining. These are the agencies represented on the Arrowhead RTCC, and we're ever growing. I'm always welcome for any agencies that want to be involved, whether as an official board member or just attending the meetings to see what's going on, to provide any input. But these are our core agencies that are on our board. So looking at how we are doing this, how we are building coordination between stakeholders, there's a couple key points that have been identified throughout building this project, and then also from receiving input from how the state is approaching this project. So one of these is identifying incentives to coordinate. The RTCC, we can provide incentives as a coordinator position and having oversight agencies provide the meeting organization logistics that I know might be rather difficult for an agency not specifically focused on this type of work can find the capacity to do so. So engaging with the RTCC removes that challenge and provides the area with a council already in place and organizational logistics to have some conversations to occur. And then also our council's mission usually meets the mission of our stakeholders as far as meeting the needs of those who may be disadvantaged in different ways or have different challenges, as well as for the transportation providers. Of course, the more riders they receive, the more they're able to have a sustainable program. We look at, so transportation decisions are made on a local level, and that can be relative to depending on what a person might consider local. It could be a very personal decision for someone. It could be a regional decision. It could be based on different logistics that might affect their decision day to day. We look at that effective service needs to come before efficient service, that a person needs to have their ride needs met in an effective way before you could ever start looking at, now let's get those done in an efficient way. We've looked at a bunch of themes of cross industries with transportation, looking at different, besides just maybe the different stakeholders that are involved, there's land use planning, age-friendly communities, and other different designs that cross industries with transportation. And then also having a realization that stakeholder coordination, we can't solve all the problems. Not everyone could have all the transportation needed for them all the time, but we can do our best to meet the needs as possible and look at other abilities that might be able to solve those problems when transportation isn't necessarily the most efficient way to solve that. So we are in Phase 4, these are looking at some Phase 3 highlights that we accomplished, which would have been 2020 going into 2021. I can provide more detail for anyone who's interested, but I could just let the group read some of the tasks we had set ahead of ourselves and were able to accomplish. And these are just some nice visuals of the how to write a bus guide. We were able to establish the Arrowhead Transit and their AUA food distribution, which was in response to COVID. And then also the Big Woods Transit acquired some non-emergency medical vehicles for enhancement of their volunteer driver program and maybe looking at some vehicle sharing. So there's another bit more things we accomplished during phase 3. And through some of our conversations with our stakeholders, the gaps we've been identifying throughout the area. Moving on to phase 4, we're about halfway through. Then for sure, we're gonna be having a phase 5. These are the tasks we've identified for this past year, which again, I can provide more detail moving forward, but it all revolves around the mission of providing more transportation options to folks in effective ways, and then also looking at different partnerships that maybe we haven't thought of before, which is one of the reasons we're here today, to hear about how Lyft can be involved and possibly replicating that with other car programs. As with many of the things happening, there's a lot of COVID response that was filtered through the RTCC. How am I doing on time? I feel like I'm good, okay. Then this is one of those initial goals of the state had established the RTCCs to start building towards, is transportation management coordination centers, which is in the planning stages, but it's ongoing. We're having ongoing meetings to establish these throughout the state, whichever way that is the most effective for our area, for different regions. So some of the benefits of having a centralized transportation center, which would be support of billing logistics, negotiation for reimbursement rates, and then also centralization of trip planning at a regional level. So there's more understanding of regional needs and how the regional geography can affect, and weather can affect trips. So there's different levels as far as what a DMCC can look like. Our region in particular is at one of the first levels because we've established our database of providers and have looked at other directories that include transportation to provide them what we have for resources, and then have our own council is considered a resource that folks can use when navigating transportation. And how we interact with our stakeholders, maintaining that relationship with our stakeholders will help the TMCCs progress as well. And then also the development of that will reduce trip planning, and more time could be spent on actually providing direct client services and less time just figuring out transportation for folks. We provide a platform for the direct client service providers to provide engage with transportation providers in a way that maybe hasn't happened before. And then also that input is shared with the state, as I had mentioned before. And so we also can provide technical assistance to stakeholders, whether it's looking at funding, solving, I call them transportation conundrums, looking at different more complex problems that might come across, and also the support we were able to provide during the pandemic through conversations and directed communication about the resources that were coming across through the stakeholders that are on our council, and then other things we had heard happening. So that is it. And then if there's any questions, I can put that in the chat and also our websites. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. We appreciate your giving us a good foundation and kind of where things are going and how the RTCC fits into all of this. So let's switch gears here a little bit. One second. There we go. So now we've got, welcome, Cherie and Fred. It's nice to see you guys both. We look forward to hearing more about what you guys are doing with the Lyft program and how we can, up here in the Arrowhead, can help support what you're doing to help improve transportation options across our region. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having us. We very much appreciate it. I know time is precious and we appreciate you giving us your time today. With me is Fred Sandel. He is our Lyft program developer. He's been working very hard on all the elements of this program. So we're going to tag team through this presentation a little bit. And because we're wanting to flip around a little bit between a PowerPoint and our website, we're going to do it as a screen share. So give me just a moment to do that here. Pull this over for you. And here we go. So ConnectAbility of Minnesota is a nonprofit. We're located in St. Cloud and we provide coordinated services primarily for people on waivers. And how we got involved in this process is we determined how much crisis of transportation is in the rural areas, and particularly the population that we serve, which are people with physical or invisible barriers, as well as low-income seniors, just don't have any options. And so we really started working to find some solutions. We worked quite closely with Dakota County. They had the pilot to connect waivers with the Lyft program. So we took their model and we looked at what the barriers were for the more rural areas and then worked with Lyft to release a lot of those barriers. And we were successful in doing that. And then we determined through our involvement with RTCC how this same model could benefit the volunteer rider programs as well as other civic organizations that have their own driver network programs. So then Fred really spent a lot of his effort in designing a training program and recruitment program for drivers. So that's what we want to share with you today. And what we've determined is it's got to be a three-step process. You really need to recruit drivers first. Then you need to look at what your training program is, and then your riders. My feeling is if we don't do this in this order, you're going to get people excited about the program and want to use Lyft for transportation, but then there won't be any drivers in the community to provide the rides. And they're like, well, that didn't work. Or we get drivers in place and we get a bunch of riders in place, and even with volunteer programs. But if the training piece isn't there, either the drivers in a volunteer program aren't properly trained for the system, or the riders aren't trained how to use Lyft, then we also have an unsuccessful situation that puts people in danger. Or if we spend all of our efforts just on creating a driver network and we spend months and months and months doing just that in a community, well, so I signed up to be a driver 4 months ago and nobody's utilizing the service, so I'm just going to turn that app off. So we need to kind of keep it rolling as you go through this process in these communities. We need to get drivers, then we need to look at the training programs, we need to get riders, and we need it all to come within just a few months of each other. And then they become a synergy, because the more people that are taking the rides, the more the drivers are going to stay engaged, or you're going to get more drivers. And then the more drivers you have in a community, the more available they are for the riders. So then the riders are utilizing it more often. And then you have more drivers and more riders. And all of a sudden you've got a community that's got transportation that didn't have it before. And in no way do we feel like this program is replacing anything. If there is public transportation already in place, that is awesome. If there's a volunteer network driver in place, that's amazing as well. And this can be thought of more as a super tool to use it differently in different situations in different communities to augment what's already there, not replace something. And in my own community of Painesville, we don't have any public transportation. We don't have any private pay transportation. We have nothing. So we're bringing this program in as kind of our first public transportation option, short of if you want to hire a party bus. We have one of those. So to start developing this driver network, we've really kind of boiled it down to a couple of really basic steps. And the first thing is we feel like it's most important and effective to conduct a community meeting. And when I say that, you know, as we're in these smaller communities, these town meetings are how we're going to get the word out there. Flyers are fine, but really it's that face-to-face meeting, answering questions, sharing the stories that's going to make a difference. And the question is, well, who do we invite to these meetings? I have been personally on Chamber of Commerce and ad hoc boards and community events and Blandon organizations. And I have found that in creating these community meetings, if you get the right recipe of people there, the success level is incredible. And so the community leaders are super important to have there. Any media at all is going to make a difference because if they can pick up on the story, they've got some great press there. You need to look at who's available in your community. For Lyft or volunteer drivers, you get retired school bus drivers, retired over-the-road drivers, retired teachers, social workers, younger families that are moms or dads that work from home that have time during the day when the kids are in school hours, civic organizations. I mean, look at the Lions Club by themselves. I mean, their whole purpose is to give back to their communities. So you get all of those main characters in that meeting, and you've created an amazing synergy that's going to start moving this to a successful platform. I would hesitate to have you stop thinking at that point. I mean, think of church groups, the book club, any other social organization, even the food supplies, food sourcing, you know, they have drivers that help with that. And we just found out today, because one of our employees unfortunately had a car accident, that car dealerships have groups of people that just run paperwork around or are the ones that go down and pick up the cars at auctions and they drive them around, and they would be a great resource for either Lyft driver or volunteer drivers. So you kind of have to think out of the box of who to invite to this meeting. But once you have them there, that's where you need to really start planning how to do this recruiting. And I am a pretty strong proponent of framing. And as I am saying this, I apologize. I came onto this a little bit late. I was having a meeting with Anoka County. And Fred, I need to get them the link to this document. So can we do that? I'm going to need to drop this in your chat. So in the chat box, I just put in a link to a document that you can download that has all this information on it. So you don't have to feverishly take any notes or have it as a check back for resource. And I'll be showing you also on that same web page that you'll be grabbing this document from all the other resources we have available for free download. But going back to framing, we need to frame what's going on in the community. So when you're having these meetings, and I'm going to speak specifically to Lyft, but you can take the same information to any volunteer driver program. Just going in and going, hey, be a Lyft driver. We need Lyft in our community. It's not going to be the most effective way to do this. We need to frame and let the people in the room know what's going on. Because as an able-bodied person who drives, I was very unaware of how many people in my own community were affected by the fact that they didn't have transportation. So we need to frame what's going on within our own community, what transportation is available, what transportation gaps there are, what other options there are that somebody may know that other people don't know and they're sharing. We also need to share what the gaps are in our community as a whole, who's being impacted, the economic impact, the fact that elderly people are being left homebound because they don't have transportation to get to the grocery store. or youth that would like to engage in school activities, but they don't have transportation because they live in a rural area. Reaching out to a whole new workforce. We all see in our communities that there's help wanted signs everywhere. And there's people who can work, but for whatever reason, they either choosing or cannot drive. And so being able to provide a driving program could increase the workforce in the community. We need to get specific on who's being affected, because when we're in these small towns, everybody in that town is my neighbor. 2,600 people live in Painesville, and I consider all of them my neighbors. I would do just about anything for anybody in Painesville that needed a hand. And there's hundreds and hundreds of people just like that in our community. So we have to make it about us, not speaking generically, but who in our community is being affected by this? You know, elderly, how many of our elderly are shut in? Do we know? Who do we know that isn't being able to get out? People with disabilities. They have the ability to assist in our community in so many different ways. They just don't drive. Again, youth, writing them off is a bad choice. They can do a lot. They can contribute a lot. And if they are 14, 15 years old or don't drive, or even 17-year-olds and don't have a car, being able to get them mobile as well can be jobs. It can be involvement in community activities. It can be involvement in volunteer opportunities. So we really need to help in this meeting show who is being affected. We need to help them see how this program or a volunteer driver program can be the tool towards the solution, not the solution, but a tool to work towards our solution. So in the case of Lyft, we can't assume that rural communities know what Lyft actually is. So we need to define it. We can't make those assumptions. Define what Lyft is, how it works from a driver's perspective, how it works from a rider's perspective. We need to dispel any myths. With Lyft in particular, what people often know is what's in Hollywood. And so that means their phone is going to ring continuously and they're going to have to pick up drunk people at the bar at 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's not what I want to do. I literally just want to help my neighbor go to church on Sundays. You can do that as a Lyft driver. And so we need to help them see how the solution works within the community, which also means you need to know how Lyft works. You need to show how each person can be part of the solution. So once we have framed what's going on in our community, we've talked about where the gaps are, we've talked about who's being affected directly and personally by this, we've helped explain what Lyft is, how it works, what the benefits are, what the limitations are, or the volunteer program. Now we need to ask, do the ask. And what is the ask? For the most part, the ask is, would you be willing to step up to be a driver? Would you be willing to use it as a rider? Would you be willing to help somebody use it as a rider? Would you be willing to become a trainer and train people how to use the app? You know, you get some of the older generation and many of them are super tech savvy and some of them aren't so much. It's not even the older generation. And they might just need somebody to help them get the app started and show them how to take that first ride. So that's also the ask. What part of this can you be the solution? And if they don't want to be a rider and they don't want to be a driver and they don't want to be a trainer, ask them to just spread the word, because that's key. This is very grassroots. And so if we can get them to say, hey, I was at this community meeting and I heard about volunteer program or Lyft program. And did you know that this is going on in our community? Well, you don't know who they're talking to and how that person might be taking that information. And they might be like, yeah, that is really cool. I never even heard about that meeting. Or yeah, I heard and I wasn't able to go because my kids had, you know, gymnastics that night. So asking them to share the information is just as powerful and effective as the person who wants to sign up and be the driver or the rider. And never, ever underestimate the value of a personal ask. It's super hard to say no to somebody that you know and that you like and who's right in front of you. And so if you're trying to do it on a poster or an email, it's easy to delete those. But if I'm coming up and I'm saying, hey, Fred, oh my God, this is so amazing. Would you be willing to help Mary learn how to do this app so she could use this program. She's kind of excited about it, but she's really kind of nervous about doing it on her own the first time. It's going to be pretty hard for Fred to go, you know what, Cherie, I don't really think so. He's going to be, well, yeah, I probably have some time. I could probably help her. But if I did it on an email or a poster, I'd be like, yeah, no, maybe not so much, got stuff going on. So that personal ask is huge. And you're at the community meeting, and that's when you do it. And just like you and I are on a Zoom meeting, as much as community meetings are more effective, you can accomplish the same thing on a Zoom meeting. So don't discount the ability to do that and have COVID be barriers on getting this moving for you. You need to prepare for recruiting these drivers. And some of the things that we've noticed is we need to really have the communities identify what resources they already have and where the resources are lacking. And who or what group in the community is willing to kind of be the champions of this program. So we've had this community meeting and we've got people buzzing about this, but as you all know, if there's not somebody to take the leadership of it, it was a great meeting and there was some coffee and I got to talk to my neighbors. But if there's somebody in the community, the Lions Club or the local downtown merchants association or the garden club, if you have anybody who's willing to champion this and keep going with this in the community, that's where you're going to get the success going on, because they're going to keep this moving and keep it flowing and keeping the information going and encouraging people to do this program. And then from that, other people are going to go like, hey, did you think about telling, community ed about this? No, we didn't even think about that at the community meeting. But because the garden club is in charge of this and they were talking to somebody having coffee at the coffee shop, now they can go and say, hey, community ed, we had this great meeting, this great things going on in our, what can you do to help promote this? And now you've got this whole other thing, but it took that champion group to keep moving this forward. And within the community, they really need to look at what advertising is available. There's flyers, there's emails, there's social media. In my own community, we have a high school that creates Bulldog TV, and they will put community announcements on Bulldog TV, which means all the students hear it, all the teachers hear it, but it's also recorded so parents can hear what's going on with schools as well, and it's broadcast live. Local newspapers are always looking for great stories, as well as radio stations. Radio stations provide free public service announcements. Church bulletins are an amazing place to try to garner some information and share. The local cafes, well, I don't know about you, but my cafe has a group of guys that play dice every day. There's nobody that knows more about what's going on in our community than those guys. So I wouldn't discount the community group either. Book club, garden club, social organizations, they all are a wealth of information. They probably have their own newsletters or the way they communicate among themselves. You get groups like the Lions Club, who are, statewide, nationwide organizations. They have networks that they can share to other small communities. So they can help spread this word. It doesn't have to be, well, we don't have a budget for this, or we don't have money for this. Grassroots, think about how we used to do things. Just talking to people, sharing information, having them share that information, and then asking them to share the information. How many times do you see something on Facebook and go, oh, that's interesting, and then you keep going, versus the very last line says, please share this. And you're like, okay. And you push the share button and then you move on. Well, you just shared it to everybody that is on your Facebook page and you didn't think too much of it. And it wasn't very much work, but you did it because somebody asked you to do it. And so don't forget that ask. The next phase is really the implementation of the plan. So it's great to talk about it. It's great to share the words. It's great to find a champion, but you really need to make sure that you're moving this forward. And so creating an accountability list. Who at that meeting said that they would do something? Write it down and then check back with them. Hey, were you able to follow up on that? Did you get that done? Did you have a different idea about this? Setting reachable goals. I am a huge goal setter. Saying that we're going to have 50 Lyft drivers in our community at the end of the month, I wouldn't say that that is a reachable goal, but you can set goals within these community meetings and then truly engage everybody. It's so easy to always go to the people that you know in your community that get stuff done. But there are so many other people that are willing to do something if they're just asked. It's the go-getters that are always like, oh yeah, I can do that. I'll take care of that. Yep, I got that. And because they're that person, that's who everybody goes to. But there's all these other people that are happy to help. They're just not the ones that are the first ones to jump up, or they don't get an opportunity because the other go-getters have already said, oh, I've got that. So engaging everybody from the full gamut of age to the full gamut of the communities. If you have a diverse community, reach out to all the different parts of your community. Everybody's got their towns divided into north side and south side, or uptown and downtown. Kingsville's divided in 3. Reach out the demographics of your community. Everybody has something to contribute to this. So if we're thinking of, you know, who in my community needs help? So we have people that are in, you know, assisted living. So they're independent, so it's assisted living, but they still don't have cars anymore. So I bet they would enjoy going to the grocery store, having the freedom to go to the high school play. Who do they primarily work with? Nurses and the staff. So can we engage with them? Can we talk to, you know, the hospital administrator and put a flyer in the lunchroom of the nurse's office? Or is there a way that we can reach out to them? So thinking of all the different groups in our community that need help, and then who engages with them, and then asking them to engage. And even the people in the living facility. Hey, will you share with your friends that we're trying to build this network and we might have some transportation available? They like to talk. And then again, just making sure that you're asking people in person. That just, it makes all the difference. And it's so hard to say no to a nice person. And as you are doing this program and you're developing it, you're moving along, and you're going to run in some hiccups. Things are maybe not going to progress as easily as you thought, or you've got more people interested in being writers and drivers, or you have several people who would love to be a writer, but you just don't have anybody that's willing to sit down with them and do that first training session with them so they feel comfortable doing it. So you're going to have to be able to monitor and adjust your plan going forward, and put emphasis back on, you know, hey, I maybe need to check with some other people to see if they would help them. Like, we all know Mary, she's awesome. You know, would Mary's neighbor's kid be willing to help show her how to use the app? So being able to monitor and adjust is huge. And as ConnectAbility of Minnesota has gone down this path with Lyft, I guarantee you, if you kind of outline the path that we've taken on this, it would look like we were a drunken sailor, because it has been left turns and right turns, and we went totally this direction, then we flipped back down. Because when we first started doing this, we thought we're helping people who are served on waivers. And so our direction was that. And then it was quickly identified that, you know what, that's not where we need to start. We need to start working to find drivers. How do we do that? So we went down one path, and they were like, you know what, nope, that's probably not the right way to do it. And we went down a whole different path. So being able to monitor and adjust and keep being nimble in the program is huge, because we're all going to run into unforeseen stalls, or if we're trying to augment another program, so a volunteer program, and maybe they're feeling like this might be competing with them. So maybe we need to pause and figure out how to work together and augment each other, instead of it becoming a small town with, you know, either you're volunteer or you're not. So being able to constantly monitor and adjust the plan is going to really lend to the success of this. And as we have developed how we have been trying to recruit drivers by having these community meetings and working with other civic organizations to have these meetings, we've also identified that we need to really put some focus and effort on training our riders to be safe. And Fred's going to take over from here and talk about this whole great program that he's developed.
Yes, thank you, Cherie. So I thought that I would start by just talking generally about how you put together a training program. So obviously the needs are going to be different in every area. And as you look at what your situation is with regard to transportation and how to build that program. One of the things you're going to consider is what kind of training is needed in our area. So it might be training riders how to use Lyft, or it might be enhancing or building a volunteer driver program, or teaching people how to use public transit. It'll all depend, of course. So we want to, the first thing you'd want to ask is what does the driver or the rider need to know in order to ride safely. You'd want to know what kind of liability is there for those that ride, and you'd want to be very clear with that to those that are doing the riding, those that are doing the driving or the training. And of course, you'd want to tailor that to those that you're going to be giving the training to. So the second step there is determining what kind of resources you're going to have in your program. So if you're going to have printed information or pre-recorded videos or other types of material, how are you going to share that with people? Are you going to email it to them, or you host it on your website perhaps, or put it on YouTube? That's something to think about. And then you'd want to look at what kind of existing resources you have as well, and just build upon that. So the third step is the training piece. And so, how are you going to provide the training? Is it something that you're going to be doing in person, or is it training that could be done virtually? That's something that you'll want to look at. And then where are you going to find these trainers, and how are you going to reach out to them, right? So when you'll also need to determine when this training is completed, that the trainers have gone through all the program materials, and how are you going to document that, and how are you going to document that this training, that if trainers are going to be training riders, that requires a process as well. These are all the questions that we asked as we started to put together a program for training riders that use Lyft. So we have developed a number of tools that we'll soon be making available on our website. And so these are tools that are going to be helping the rider to learn how to use Lyft, and for the trainers so that they can train the persons that may need some extra help in learning how to use Lyft safely and independently. So we determined that we wanted to have our materials online. So we want to have our materials available to people 24/7. We can't be in every place around the state. We just want to make that information available on our website. So we've developed a number of materials, and we asked our trainers, they need to know everything that the rider does, right? They need to be just as educated, more educated than the rider would be, because they're going to be the ones that are helping those that may need a little extra help in understanding how to use the technology, or to understand how they can use their Lyft app in order to take their rides, identify their drivers, and and how to pay for that and all that. So we provided that material in the form of videos. We have some printed materials and presentations that will all be available on our ConnectAbility of Minnesota website. So the materials that we're including for the trainer include how to use the Lyft Ride app, and the skills that they would need to communicate to the riders when they're doing the training. We have some information there also about Minnesota waivers and how the Lyft Pass credit works, because the riders that we work with here are generally going to be using that waiver program. We have information about HIPAA data protection requirements, and that's extremely important. As you know, that we protect any information that the trainer is very mindful of the information that they may receive when they're doing the training. We also have some information on there about how trainers should work with and communicate with people that have personal challenges. So like I say, we provide that information in a number of different forms. We ask that the candidate for training understand all this information, and then we're going to give them a knowledge quiz, and we're going to make sure that they understand the material by passing the quiz, which is based on the instructional materials that we provide them. So we are making all this information available for you to share and for you to bring to your own areas. We believe that the information it's really not ours. It's good information. It's not only applicable to Lyft, but it could be applicable to volunteer training or other types of programs as well. We will be making that available. You know, when you're looking to find trainers, the thing that you really need to let people know is that they're fulfilling a need. They're feeling there is whether it be for drivers, as Sri was talking about, or for trainers, you need to know that they're fulfilling a very vital need and that they're making an impact. And that's with the materials that we provide, that we're sharing with you, we're very hopeful that you're going to be able to do that. So I'm going to turn it back to Cherie. She has more information about the resources for our writer program.
Thanks, Fred. So we're talking about, we've got drivers now, and we've got trainers that are either going to train the drivers or train the riders. So now we're ready to get those riders together. And I'm right back to hosting another community meeting, because I can't think of a better way to share the information about how to become a rider, Lyft or volunteer based. What are the rules? What are the restrictions? How do you utilize it? In Lyft's case, how do you download the app? Let's do that hands-on right now, folks. Let's put your phone out. Let's get that app downloaded. Let's get it set up. We can give you a list before the meeting so you know what to bring with you so that you can do this hands-on and make sure you're not running into any barriers. And who are we inviting to that? Every single person that we can think of that might need to utilize the program, including bringing back those community leaders, those that are in the different civics organizations, and anybody that we can get in the media. We really need to think that this is not just an older population or a population with barriers. These are young people, middle-aged people for various reasons, economic impact, they don't own a car, DUI, they don't have a car for a couple of years. There's a lot of reasons why somebody would not have transportation available to them. We definitely need to outline and explain the program, and I'm a huge proponent of doing it audibly and visibly. So you need to have paper information available for them to review, take with them. You need to share that there's training available. So not only can they come to the community meeting to learn about it, and we can even help them hands-on getting the app set up, but we can also help them get connected with somebody in the community that's going to help them take that first ride. Learn how to do it, be a resource for them, answer their questions. It's scary to do something for the first time. Then once you got it, it's like, I got this, I'm independent. We also want to really share the benefits. So the drivers know that we've shared the benefits with them, and the trainers know how valuable what they're doing. But as a rider, am I making a difference? Absolutely. And we need to let them know that. And how are they making a difference? They're making a difference by providing more rides, which will encourage more drivers, which will allow more people to have more consistent rides. By having more drivers and more rides available and more consistency, then that starts opening up for people who need to do it for jobs, or they need to be able to get a ride every day. So as a rider, you are having an economic impact on your community. You're helping your other neighbors in your community being able to have the transportation available. You're helping people in your community have jobs by being riders. By being able to go to social engagements, you are helping those events being more successful. go to the high school play, more people in the audience, more successful, more fun for the kids in the audience, being able to go to church and being involved in the events and the bazaars and making everything more successful just by being there and being part of your own community. They have to really feel that they're making a difference just by utilizing the services. We need to share that if there's costs, even volunteer programs might have costs. Lyft is definitely going to have a cost. Lyft themselves are going to set the rates, and we need them to understand how that works. Got to be very upfront about that information. And then again, hands-on demonstration of how to actually utilize the app or how to contact and utilize a volunteer driver program. How do I get those rides? How do I actually do this? Who do I call? Is there a website? So that hands-on versus just telling them that it's out there, or sure, because I don't know about you guys, but there's been so many times that somebody's like tried to walk me through something really quickly. And then when I go to actually do it, I'm like, yeah, that screen isn't what they talked about. And so being able to do that hands-on or having that trainer help them is going to make a big difference. From there, again, just like the other programs, you need to promote it within your community. You need to share the word that you've got the drivers now, and it's time for riders to step up and start utilizing it. You need to look at all the different places in your community that you can share that information. And of course, the drivers are going to want to share that information because that's how they're going to get more income using that, or volunteer programs, because it's going to help promote and bolster their program or help promote other people to become drivers in the volunteer program. And just like with any well-played plan, you're still going to have to monitor it and adjust it as you go. So if all of a sudden you're realizing you're not having very many people, utilizing the service, or you have drivers going, yeah, nobody's, pinged for a ride for a couple of days, you really need to look at what's going on and how to approach it differently. We don't know how everybody is accepting information in their world and in their lives. Some people live online and other people don't even have computers, or they don't use any social media. So we have to find different ways to connect with different groups of people. And you're going to have to constantly adjust and monitor. But that's where those champions in your community are going to come into play and help, just like they helped with the drivers, they can help make sure that riders are utilizing the services as well. So I'm going to pop back here again. So from ConnectAbility's perspective, we do not have a volunteer driver program. What we are doing is really trying to help communities understand how Lyft could be a super tool in their community and how they can successfully set up a driver network. And so it's important for people to understand what Lyft actually is. And it is an at-will transportation, which means it's only available if there's drivers available. If you call a taxi cab company, they kind of have to come and get you, and they have to do it at a preset time. At will just means that there's drivers available that are willing to give rides at that time. So you may have 12 drivers in your community, but if they choose to have their apps off at the time or not wanting to do rides, there's no transportation available. So got to be clear on what it is. It does work. It's all over the state. It's all over the nation. It's building much, much bigger in Minnesota. And again, if we can use it to augment the existing transportation options, then both win. But in no means do we think that Lyft is the solution. It's just a creative tool to help fill some of the gaps. And how we've approached this from ConnectAbility's perspective is very grassroots. We are a very small nonprofit. We do not have $1 million budget to do this. We have gratefully and thankfully been blessed with catching the attention of MnDOT, who saw what we were doing and saw that we were trying to think outside of the box to find resources for our area residents. And so they approached us and asked us to step up as a lead agency for the RTCC, which has opened up a world of communication opportunities, networking with all the other RTCCs and networking with all the providers in our own backyard in these 5 counties. And then DHS says, wow, you're taking what Dakota County did and you're ramping it up across the state. We think that's pretty cool. So DHS stepped up and they provided us with a grant that we can directly help with paying trainers $25 a stipend for every training they do if they're training somebody to use Lyft for the purpose of employment. They also said that they will help us pay for a $25 gift card because it's required to have a $25 credit card to start a Lyft app as a rider. Well, again, a lot of the population that we serve may not have credit cards. And so if people on waivers are trying to use transportation for employment, we have the ability to give them the Visa card in lieu of the credit card so they can get the app started and can utilize it. We've also recently been approached by Deed. They're wanting us to step up as a provider so that people who are looking to use the service for employment across the state, the Deed dollars can help in some cases pay for the actual rides. And so we've really got some state government that has stepped up to help cover some of the direct costs to the clients, but there's no money that's sitting in this magic pool to help build this network or advertise this. So we're doing this very grassroots by having meetings like this, having community meetings. I'll be working with Anoka County's RISE, helping them set up community meetings in all of the communities that have their offices. We need to approach this differently of, hey, become a Lyft driver, more so of neighbors helping neighbors. When you're in a small town, everybody in your town is your neighbor. And it's very easy to want to help those that live in your community. And so if we approach it more on that level, we're finding that's much more successful than going, hey, become a Lyft driver, make money, then help your community. If we start with the help people that you know, or get to know, or meet new people in your community, we're finding that to be a significantly more successful approach to build both the driver, trainer, and rider programs. And letting them know that what they're doing is making a difference. It's making a difference in the community as a whole, and it's making a difference for the individual people who are utilizing the services. And like I said earlier, every single person in your community has the ability to help in some way, even if it is just sharing the information. And it is simple. This is not hard stuff. We're not telling you anything that you guys all don't know. It's just we've put it all together in kind of a tidy package and we're making it work. So it's not hard, it's not complicated. It doesn't require a bunch of steps or hoops. It's very simple. Any community can start doing this today. Just spreading the word is all it takes to get the momentum going and building the flame. We say that, 3 strikes of a match. The first one, you get that little spark. The second one, you get the little bit of smoke, but that third time that you strike it, you get that fire. It's just starting the conversations and getting it going and getting that fire started. And then telling the story of the community. It's amazing how oblivious people can be in a community of who else is in their community and what their needs are and how they can help them. We have a food shelf. I don't really know in my community who utilizes that. I don't need to know that I can help contribute, but I don't know their story. I don't know how many people in my community are shut in without transportation. And so if somebody tells me the story of my community, I'm going to pay attention and then I'm going to figure out how I can help, because I may not be able to be a driver. I work too much. I could possibly be a trainer. I have limited time. But if they tell me the story and I can figure out, well, I know a lot of people, I'm on social media a lot, I could spread the word that way. So telling the story really helps people understand how they can be part of it. And thinking outside of the box. You have to look at all the situations in your communities. We've had so many interesting cases that have come up that people have called us and said, hey, how would Lyft be able to help this? And I would go, that's interesting. And we noodle through it. And pretty soon we had an outside the box thinking on this. And it's been some pretty cool situations and scenarios that we've been able to come up with and help people. The only one I'll share with you today is There is a community in northern Minnesota that Catholic Charities provides the frozen meals. So a family can get 10 frozen meals delivered once a week. So that's 5 days. But people have to be able to come up and get that. So Catholic Charities delivers it to a resource point in the community, and then the family members come and pick it up. There's a couple of families in this one particular community that has no transportation. So the food is there, they are borderline starving, and they can't get to it. And that's just not okay. And so we worked with the group that is the way station for this Catholic Charities, and they took one person and turned them into a Lyft driver. The driver is not driving people, he's driving the food on a route, delivering it. And then the organization is paying the Lyft driver to do that. And then they have fundraising and grant funds to help pay for that. Before that, they couldn't figure out how to get the people to the food. And now they've figured out how to get the food to the people using Lyft. So there's all kinds of cool outside the box ways to think about this. And then beating a dead horse here, just ask people, what do they think, how they can help, what ideas they have, what challenges they have. It's amazing how so much can come to the surface that you haven't thought about that can be the answer, can be the resource, can stir the conversation to a different direction so that we can pivot if we need to. So it's, again, this is simple, keeping it simple. Now, the big question is, how can connectability help you? And so that's where I would like to switch this to our website and show you what we've got going on that would be services that you could utilize. So on our website, we have a transportation tab and a rider program. If you click on the rider program, it's the page that I have open. On here, we have, and I see that's not going to load because we're live, so it'll take a minute. We have information about how to be a rider. And Fred worked very hard and created a rider safety video. And it talks all the way through the whole process of how to become a rider, how to safely utilize the program, and all the steps to setting it up. We also have a PowerPoint that is a step-by-step, screen-by-screen outline of how to set the app up and how to get started with the app. With the trainer program, again, we have this amazing video of how to actually go through the training program and get the information. We have the caregivers video. We, again, had about 10 questions that we were able to answer. So we created a video to help caregivers understand how the program works or how we can address some of their concerns or issues. And being a driver, how to do the driving piece of it as well. From there, we have a resource page, because I see we're running out of time. On here, all the resources that we have been creating, we have created unbranded versions of them. And so we're encouraging anybody in every organization that can utilize anything that we've created to go grab it, take it, and utilize it in any way that would benefit your community. So we have short little, 1, 2, 3 minute videos on how to help a neighbor, how to make money, food sourcing ideas, retaining employment. We have videos on recruiting drivers. We have a sample community agenda for having that community meeting. The information that you received today in that chat is right here. It's a button, you click that, and you are able to download that information. For the training program, we have a couple of videos here that you can pull down and utilize, and same with the rider program. And we will continue to keep populating this with more and more resources, and everything that we can put on here unbranded, we are, because we're wanting people to be able to utilize it, put your own community brand on it or organization, own it, share it, use it. We have 6 more little 55-second videos that will be going up tomorrow as well, that, again, short little snips that you could put on social media saying you're going to have a community member meeting for riders or drivers or trainers. And so we'd please encourage anybody to grab anything that they would find useful off of this resource page, and then continue to keep coming back to it, because we will keep populating this with more and more resources as we get them developed. And then last page that I wanted to share is the Ride Trainer program that Fred had put together. So on here is the actual program that we use with ConnectAbility. So we have the application, the release of liability form, and the HIPAA consent form. So again, you're welcome to snag all of those. These are branded, but you can get the information and strip it off. We have the videos for the safety of the driver, the program itself, and then the step-by-step of putting together the app. Our test link is here. We're just finishing off the last couple of questions and we'll get that linked up. So after they go through all the training material, they'll take the test, then we'll know that they've passed it, and then we can start utilizing them as a trainer. That's a lot of information. What questions can we answer for you?
Well, Sherry, I want to say, first of all, thank you to you and Fred for being willing to come on today and talk with us about this. I think this is such a neat opportunity for communities that, you know, Lyft is, under normal circumstances, Lyft would not be looking at Ely or something or Aiken as a potential market, but this provides that opportunity for us to add that option in those communities. And for people who are driving to be able to have the option of driving for only waivers or driving for only that neighbor or driving for the public, and being able to toggle those things off and on and being able to have those options, I think is really, really neat about this. It looks like we've got a couple of questions. Lisa was asking, how is this paid through waivers?
So really quickly, Lisa, we receive a referral form from a case manager. Then Jamie figures out approximately how much money we think they're going to need based on some questions. We receive a service agreement back from the county case manager using the T2003 billing code. We fund the app. So if they want to say they want to put $200 a month on there, we fund that on there. If they only used $150 worth of rides, we get a bill from Lyft at the end of the month that says 150 rides. And then we bill that to the state against their waiver, and we pay Lyft directly for all the rides, everybody that we're servicing. And we have some safety features added in with that app. So if they lose their phone, we're able to turn the funds off immediately so somebody else can't use their waiver dollars. And if they should run out of waiver dollars in a month, they still have the option of using private pay. So they're not just left without transportation. And because the way that we bill it on the waiver, we're able to bill in $1 increments. And so we can adjust month to month on their usage without having to change their service agreement. And yes, we have 6 different other health plans that we can also bill this through if their policy provides for transportation. We have the Blues, UCare, Health Partner, Bridgeview, Availity, Medica. With the change in the system going to UHealth, we're switching over to that as well to be able to provide. So we have several different options available to help people.
Martina's asking, is ConnectAbility of Minnesota willing to expand to other counties for the billing piece?
So right now we have the ability to do all 87 counties of Minnesota, and that was the agreement that we made with Lyft.
Tim asks, any issues with counties refusing to authorize market rates based on the Lyft ride cost?
So right now, Lyft is showing spikes in their per ride fees in metro areas, but not so much in the rural areas. And yeah, that's a concern right now. And that's the biggest thing that I hear on meetings is how do we combat that? The answer, and we brought Lyft into a meeting with RISE, and the answer to that is the more drivers we have in an area, the more it deflates the cost of the per ride. And so we have the ability as individual people out in the community to actually lower the costs and the price of the rides that Lyft is setting. Have we had any counties refusing at this point? It's just a matter of if they choose to turn in a service agreement or not. So I wouldn't know if a county is refusing to do it or not. And we just had a meeting with Anoka County just prior to this one, and that was a conversation we were having. The great thing with ConnectAbility is we don't require contracts with the counties. So if a case manager from Anoka County wanted to send in one client just to see how it goes, we're happy to do that. If they want to do 1, 5, or 500, we're willing to help the counties in any way that we can. And we work with them as any issues are arising. And then we are constantly trying to find ways to combat any barriers that are being brought to our attention. Our service fee is a flat $25 per month on a waiver. And basically that just covers the billing to DHS. The question is ConnectAbility the employer of the drivers? No, we are not, and neither is Lyft actually. They are 1099 employees, so they are not W-2 employees of Lyft either. However, Lyft takes the responsibility of doing the background check, confirming that they have a good driving record and maintaining their insurance. However, with the training program that Lyft, or that Fred set up for us, the trainers will go through a background check through ConnectAbility of Minnesota.
Any other questions? Well, seeing no other questions, at least at this point, because I know I'm one of those people too who 5 minutes from now you think, oh, I should have asked that. And so I'm really glad Cherie and Fred, you guys have provided your information, if the folks have questions and things like that, they can follow up. We will get out a link to everyone tomorrow with the link to the recording from the session today. So if you want to watch it again, you want to share it with colleagues, you can feel free to do that. And then we'll also include the links to the resources as well. So
great.
Oh,
I do see two last quick questions. Does Lyft require drivers to use their own vehicles, or could Lyft drivers use an accessible vehicle owned by another person or entity? So you do have to use your own vehicle as a driver. However, Lyft did just share with us that they are looking at buying accessible vehicles in Minnesota to get a fleet of Lyft vehicles out there. And then the other piece of that is we're working with them through our RTCC to see if there's a way to kind of use an accessible vehicle as like a library book so that other drivers could come in and use the vehicle, checking it out as a Lyft driver. So we're working through that with our RTCC. And then last question was, is there any issues with driver's insurance that needs to change to participate? I personally signed up as a Lyft driver just so I knew how the process worked, and they took my personal insurance. I didn't have to have a rider on it or higher coverage. So I believe that your standard personal insurance does fit the bill. And with that, I know we're super over time. So thank you everybody so much. We've appreciated it. Fred has done an amazing amount of work on this program, and we hope that it will benefit you. And please definitely reach out. The document that we provided the link for has all of our contact information on there. So please reach out with any questions, or if you need any help setting up a community meeting, we are here to help.
We appreciate the opportunity, and please come to us if you have any questions or if we can help you out.
All right, thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening and enjoy the blissful warm weather that the heat wave we're experiencing. All right, have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys.